So joining me today is Dr. Ed Turose of the Focus Life Institute. Dr. Ed and I go back, I don't know, a couple of years almost, something like that, a good period of time. He has a very impressive corporate background, a powerful love for Jesus, and a commitment to pass on the inheritance of his heart and what God has deposited in him to the next generation. So I asked him to be on a program with me because I actually want him to share that deposit with you. And I've got a ton of questions. But before we get going, Ed, I'm going to ask you just introduce yourself a little bit to the folks who are going to be watching this interview. A little bit about your background and how you got to where you are now.
Well, thank you, Michael. And anybody that needs information that Michael has on business and on spiritual matters of wisdom, I want to encourage you to look at Michael Pink's website because it's very powerful. It's really helped me in the course of the years we've been together. My whole passion right now is to serve this generation. Just like David said in Acts, he says, the Bible says that he served this generation.
Mhm.
And we have a generation right now that's changing. We're at a place right now where there's so many things going on in the world that I took my background of being in Fortune 100 for 37 years. I spent 10 years with Unilever. When I came out of college back in 77, I went right into Unilever, got into sales, got into management very quickly. So I started working with people, Michael. And that's interesting when you're dealing with different personality styles, right? And then I got downsized and I went to work for Coca-Cola. And I spent 27 years with Coca-Cola. There was a bridge there before 3 years where basically I got downsized and I got called back 3 years later because, I left in a really good spot. I blessed people. I made sure I left right with the organization. And I got myself involved with the DISC personality style, DISC, very unique.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
started studying that. And then when I went back, Coke called me back 3 years later, gave me everything back. And that doesn't normally happen. That was really a God thing, how he blessed me. And I started training individuals on personality. I would go into different markets across the country. So I was a manager of a $75 million territory in the Great Lakes. But I also had the ability to train people throughout the country because they saw the value in helping people understand each other, how to adapt, blend, and connect your personality style. That's hard for a lot of people when you think about it. And you and
Yeah,
I,
yeah, yeah.
we work with people. So the Lord began to really impress upon me back in the early 2000s that He wanted me to train and really change this generation by providing them the tools they need for success. Now, being in Fortune 100, I was able to manage people constantly, and I saw the things that people needed. And so I would train them to be able to be successful. And I had the largest share of the company in my market. And I had major rollouts of new products that God just blessed me with. I had the highest share of that ability to do that. And I had my people, we would pray before we'd go to meetings. And, it was just a powerful thing that God was doing. But my passion was in the young people coming up and says they're not trained, they're not equipped. And many people who were coming into organizations, Michael, they never even were at college and really graduated in a major of business. We had
Mm.
psychology majors and all these things. So I felt there was a real issue with this generation. And so for 3 years, when I got downsized, I started taking a program out that I created. I didn't own the program, but I created the program, the high schools and colleges, and I saw something in young people when they realize who they are and their personality and their strengths and their general characteristics, the value. Boy, they lit up, Mike. There's something
Hmm.
even adults. Now I married my opposite, back in 1977, and when you talk personality, right, first there's this good thing, then there's some of this stuff, and I learned when to keep my mouth shut and when really to be able to know what I needed to say, not to say. So I transitioned that into corporate America. And when came time, the Lord began to deal with me, and I wrote some books on focus, and really focus is what I want to talk about. And I wrote some books on honor and excellence, responsibility, order, expectation, servitude, the hero's principle. And I start doing these things to be able to help young people get focused and be prepared. Everybody has potential, but only
Yeah.
the prepared will fulfill it. And if you're not
Mm.
prepared in this day and age to go out in society, you're going to have a real problem. That's why I think many parents stay up at night and they're stressful. But my passion right now, after I left Fortune 100, I transitioned back in 2017 and I created the Focus Life Institute to help young people get focused educate them, empower them, equip them with the tools they need to identify their calling and assignment in life, but to focus on that, but also really to gain personal fulfillment. This
Mm.
generation wants personal fulfillment. They want to mean something to people. And so we created these tools and these programs around that that prepare them for their future.
All right. Well, listen, that's awesome. I want to ask you some questions. Parents are typically the ones that are buying the program for their kids or paying for it. Is that true?
Yes, most parents right now say, my child needs this. Now, the child might not think they need it, but I believe that the parents say, now, the other fallacy sometimes is the parents think the school system is educating, equipping their children, and all statistics say that is not true. They're not giving them the practical, essential soft skills, things that they need for to go into the workplace.
Well, kids might not think they need stuff, but I remember back in the 70s, in the early 70s, when I was in high school, and my dad said, "You need a haircut." And I was thinking, "No, I don't," but I got one.
Right.
And it was ultimately for the good. But let me ask you, what do most parents, from your experience, what do most parents want for their children? What
Well, it's interesting. The Pew Foundation just came out here about a year ago and says there's three things after they interviewed thousands of parents, what these parents want. Number one, they want their child not to have the anxiety and stress that's in the world right now. And we know that a recent statistic I saw, 42% of Gen Z, this is 13 to 26, are in depression. 42%.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so there's this mental anguish of stress and pressure and, extracurricular activities and keeping everything balanced. Maybe parents are working two jobs. So the first thing they want is, can we eliminate or at least reduce the stress and the pressure on them? And I believe vision is an important part of that. When a child has vision, that's going to alleviate a lot of this because they're going to be targeted and focused about focus, right, to get there. Second thing they said was, I want my child to have job satisfaction. Now, that's where we come in because we help young people basically match up their personality style with jobs in the 16 career clusters. That's very critical. You might have an interest, but if I am a people person and I decide to be an accountant and I'm in the cubicle somewhere, I'm going to have a real stress. That's why 60% of the people hate their job because there's not a hand in the glove fit. We do that for parents and their children. We match that personality style with jobs as a hand in glove fit. So there is job satisfaction. And the final thing is they want financial security. They don't
Hmm.
want them child maybe living at home till they're 40. They want to make sure that there's ability to give a financial security. Now, when you have the right job, and the tools we teach, for example, one of our courses on the heroes principle of the virtues and values needed. In fact, I taught that at the Coca-Cola company when I retired. My boss said, teach the people on the virtues they need. What happened was that positioned me for advancement when I was able to honor people, do things with excellence, take personal responsibility, be in order and submitted to those in authority above me, have an expectation spirit when I walked into the workplace and served somebody. That elevated me, gave me influence, and I'll tell you what, that took me right to the top.
I love that. So, how prepared today, given the education system that is in place right now, how prepared do you think most students are to step into their real God-given purpose and opportunity? How prepared are they in your opinion?
I would say 75% or maybe 70, 75% do not really understand their calling or assignment in life. And they really don't know what career I should get into. That's why some of the statistics are really kind of concerning to me. First of all, the guidance counselor, average guidance counselor, spends about 30 minutes with your child in 4 years. And most of that is dealing with social emotional learning or taking you a career fair where there's 150 booths there. And you're looking around saying, why don't we target you on two or three booths because you worked through our program?
Yeah.
And so what happens is that the school system is basically looking at the numbers of graduation. Did I graduate 98, 99% of a graduating class? If you've been to a graduation, they have in the back of their hats where they're going to school. I'm going to this university. Well, what's funny is I have had a few people come to me and says, my son dropped out, in the first semester. So they don't even follow back up. But what's important right now
Mm.
is that 50% of young people who decide to go to college are not even working in the discipline they went to school with. So a parent spends 100 to 150, $200,000 in education. Kid comes out and they're not even working what they went to school for. Second of all, right now they're saying that 40% drop out of college in the first 2 years. And lastly, 80% change their major course of study between 1 to 3 times with the average cost of $12,000. So I'm trying to help parents save time, save money, and really get their child focused so they're targeted to be able to go into, maybe it's not going right into the workplace. Remember, what's happening in the workplace right now is that business and government are hiring now based on skills, not on degrees. So you really got to understand and match up that personality style. 2 year degrees, blue collar jobs are tremendous right now. There's opportunity, but really in the school system, they're pushing them through just to get them through, but there's really no follow up after that to see how well they did.
Here, let's talk about skills.
Yep.
If the marketplace is looking for young people with skills and the schooling, including college, is generating people who have a piece of paper because they paid 50, 80, 100,000 or more for it. Given that reality, what skills do they need that the employers value that they're not getting?
So LinkedIn's been talking about this for 20 years. And every year LinkedIn comes out with a special report on the skills needed for the job. And I've been following that. So what I did was I'm basically on the personality style and I match up careers. But then I went and I created part of the course and program we have is skills for success. I took the top 10 essential soft skills. And this is what they're not getting, Michael. What LinkedIn says they don't have the essential soft skills. They might have some technical skills. They don't have the essential soft skills. I took those top 10 and I put this program together based on individual personality styles of the DISC, the DISC personality style. So if you're a dominant person, I'm going to teach you how to communicate effectively. So I took the top 10: communication, collaboration, conflict resolution. Those three are very, in
Yeah.
fact, communication is number one. I took decision making and problem solving. I took confidence, creativity, and character, and time management. So I took those top 10 and I built the program that we have for young people around a practical and personal program to help them get the right skills. Think about this. If I had these skills in my repertoire and I walked into an organization, I said, listen, I know how to adapt, blend, and connect with different people. I know how to collaborate because we're going to be in teams. I know how to reduce conflict. I can make decisions, I can problem solve, and you have this time management skills that we put together. All of a sudden, that elevates you above and positions you for advancement. And that's where job satisfaction, and that's where financial security come in.
You know, I mean, I'm hearing you and I'm thinking, I don't know of any education program, meaning traditional government schools and that kind of thing, that prepare anyone with that set. They might have one thing or may have another, but they don't. I'm not aware of that even being there.
No, nobody right now of what the way the Lord told me to put this together, and believe me, this is all done spending time in God's presence. I'm a man of intimacy. I love the presence of God. And when I began to put this together, the Lord showed me this focused progression. The first thing you talked about in the courses we have, and we have individual courses or in one major course, is to take people through the hero's principle of virtues and values. If I can establish you with the right virtues and values, because believe me, I don't care what's going on in society right now. If you're working for major, any type of business or even small business, there's a value system and a virtue system they want you to operate in. Honor, excellence. These are things. They're going to fire you if you don't. That's what we're seeing. Seeing a lot of Gen Z being fired quickly because they don't have these skills. Second of all, the progression then took them to finding life's direction, matching that career choice. We do vision. We talk about their passions. We look at basically the 7 spheres of influence. Should they go into business or government, education, arts and entertainment, maybe media? We take that personality into the careers, 16 career clusters. We match that up. There's a hand to glove fit. We take them to different offline internet sites to help them get more information, peel that onion down, then set goals. Then take them to the skills,
Mhm.
top 10 skills. Now I threw a bonus in here. I interview all the time with the Coca-Cola company. So I threw in the behavioral interview, and that's the interview people have right now. What's the behavioral interview? Give me a situation, task, action, and results, the STAR technique. And so I put that in there also. Then I take them after that, from that skills for success into entrepreneurship, Michael. I've included that. So think about this. Young people might have a dream when they get a little bit older, maybe work for somebody. I want to be an entrepreneur. We created this process to help them fulfill that.
Man, I tell you what, I mean, I'm just listening to this, and one of the realities is that the kind of things you're talking about used to be what the majority of kids they came out with a sense of, hard work and diligence and ethics and all that kind of stuff. And now the common complaint you hear among employers is I can't find any good help.
Right.
And what that means to me is if you have a student that has been prepared through your program, they it's not like, well, they're competing with 10 other people like it. They're probably in a field by themselves. And if you can shine like that, you know, my father passed on to me some values and skills. The very first job I got out of high school, I graduated early from high school in February of the year. And so I needed a job, and there was I wanted one anyway. And so there was a job for warehouseman. Now that's a low level job, and it was in the early 70s. And so February of 73, and the job market was, I mean, there was higher unemployment, at least in British Columbia where I was. It wasn't good. And so I saw this ad for a warehouse, and as if I found out later, there was hundreds of applicants, hundreds for one position as a warehouseman. And so I told my dad, I didn't know that. I said, "Oh, I'm going to go apply for this job." And he said, "Well, you need to put on a suit and tie." I said, "It's working in a warehouse. Nobody wears a suit and tie." And he said, "But you're going to, and you need to." And I thought, he knows something. He was passing on something to me. And so I went down and applied for that job. Hundreds of men, married men with families and responsibilities, applied for that job. They did give it to another man, but they also hired me. And the fellow told me, his name was Tony. He said, "The reason we hired you is in all my years, I've never had anybody apply for a job like this in a suit and tie. There's something special about you and the way you're thinking. So we're hiring you. We're going to put you out in the pipe shed. You know, that's where we're going to go. But we don't want to miss out on having the opportunity of having you work for us." Sometime later, my parents moved, and I was still very young, but they moved out west. In fact, I was a teenager. They moved from out west to the east coast of Canada, 4,000 miles away from me, and I was on my own. And it wasn't long after that, I was 18, and Michelin Tire was opening a major facility at the port of Halifax in Nova Scotia. And so my dad let me know in a letter. He said, they're hiring a lot of people here. If maybe a good opportunity for you. Really, what he was trying to do was, it'd be nice if you lived out here with us.
Right.
I
Right.
didn't catch that, but I flew out for the interview. And during the interview, I apparently conducted myself in a way, and I was just applying for a job in the factory. And I remember in the process of that, the gentleman interviewing me, I could, in looking back, he saw something different. And then to test it, he said, "Michael, what's a 15 squared?" I said, 225. He said, "What's 25 squared?" I said, 6 1/4. And he stopped the interview. He said, "You do not belong in this job in the factory. There is a job that we want, and it's a very responsible job, but legally for that job, you have to be 19.
Wow.
And so, can I call you on your 19th birthday and offer you the job?" I said, "Sure." And he did, which was, probably 6 months later, but on my birthday, he called, and I'd already found other employment. But what I didn't understand then, but I appreciate in hindsight, the things that were preparing me, there was a certain I put it this way, a purity or the way my mind worked, and I don't mean mathematical skills, but just I conducted myself in a way because I had been trained. But that's rare.
Mhm.
It's rare today.
But think about what you just said. You conducted yourself. I remember when I was I went to work as soon as I graduated high school, you go to college, I was playing football at a small school, and I worked in a steel mill. 3 to 11. Okay. Hard work. I was working steel man, man. I ran out at 11 o'clock. I punched out and I ran, right? I knew I didn't want to be there. I mean, even my dad worked at Westinghouse for, 42 years. They gave him a watch and it broke the next day. What happened was that I went to work I said, I need to get some sales experience. I went over to Kenny Shoes. They're not in business anymore. I walked in with a suit on. Bell-bottom suit back in the day, right?
Yeah, I
And the
remember
guy
those.
Dick said, he says, "You're hired." I said, "I didn't even talk to you." He says, "You're the only guy who walked in here with a suit."
No kidding.
He said same thing. So I got hired there. I'm working in the retail of shoes and that. Then when I graduated and I went in with Unilever, there was 126 people that were interviewed for this small territory. But I had a faith in God. God basically, when I was in the prayer closet, told me I was going to get this job. But think about this. That's why I start off in the courses we deal with in the area of these virtues. We, honor in an age of dishonor. We live in an age of dishonor, right?
Yeah, we do.
Excellence in an age of average. Okay, people just getting. I have a nephew who used to work for a local a grocery store. He says, "So what are you doing?" "Just what they tell me to do, Uncle Ed." I said, "No, no, you got to do more. You got to do work in excellence. Responsibility in an age of entitlement, right? Order in an age of individual, being independent, right? Expectation in an age of pessimism. My boss used to tell me, "Hey, Ed, man, the business is off. I need you coming in, jacking everybody up, get everybody pumped up. We got to make this number." But we don't. Most people walk in there very pessimistic. "I hate my job." He called me up before the meetings and said, "You are the guy that needs to get everybody moving." And then servanthood in the age of individualism. We live in an age right now that has been countered these virtues that employers are still demanding. And that's why we're seeing a lot of young people go into a workplace. They've not been prepared with the virtues and values, and they walk in there because when I worked for Coca-Cola, there was a code of conduct, Michael. I had to sign the code of conduct. I had to operate in their code of conduct. If I didn't, they're going to fire me. And I just read recently that there's a lot of people right now not making it past the first year as Gen Z because they're not prepared. That's what we do with the Focus Life Institute. Get you focused, educated, equipped to be able to help you have the tools you need for success.
Wow. I mean, you have this volume of information, but it's really transformational for kids. Now, I'm thinking, but you would know better from your experience, that probably most parents don't even know how to guide their child into something. They feel very inadequate to prepare them for life. It reminds me of my father when I was probably 13 years old, whatever it was, 13, 14, in the eighth grade. And my dad came into, or seventh grade, I would have been 13. He came into my bedroom one night and he said, maybe we should have a talk, the talk, sex talk,
Yeah.
And he said, they have a class at school, don't they, on sex education? I said, yep. He said, do you have any questions? I said, nope. He said, okay, good. It was like he didn't know how to talk about it. So
Right.
that was it. And I think on other topics, they people don't know how to unlock
Mhm.
the huge potential that's inside all of us. And
Right.
here's what I think, and I want to see if you agree with this. But I was walking and praying about this today and thinking about the tremendous value you bring and unlock for parents that can change a nation. You're going to change a child, you're going to change a community, change the city, change the state, change the world. And I was thinking about that. And what happens is parents don't know, so they kind of they parse that out to the school. Like they'll teach you. That's what my dad did with the sex education. Well, they'll teach you. And between them and the kids, he said the kids talk about, yeah, they do. Okay, well then you don't have any questions? No. And so they tend to, put that off to the school to teach you how to pick your career and do all those kinds of things. And but it doesn't work because the schools don't do it and they're going downhill, and the college doesn't do it because the colleges, for the most part, they're trying to get their 50, 80, 100,000, 200,000, depending on what
Right.
you're going for. They're looking for that, and for that they'll give you a piece of paper. And and of course sometimes it can be helpful. I mean, as you pointed out, you can learn some technical skills,
Right.
but the you might learn the technical skills to be a really good accountant, but you're not wired for that.
No.
But you got the technical skills. And so you end up going into, because that's what you took in school, and you end up having a life of misery.
Mhm.
And it's wrong. And so what happens, I think, is a lot of kids, this is, I want to see if you agree with this, but a lot of kids, they finish high school, they don't know what they want to do. And so they think, maybe they don't rush into college. I don't know. And so they get a job so they can make some money, have a little bit of independence. But what happens is, and they're still, I'm going to figure out what I want to do. The world is my oyster. But then, so they got a job, they got a paycheck, they got some freedom, they can do some things, they get in debt, and then they meet the girl that they love and they're going to marry, and they get married, and then they have two kids. There's before you know it, Jed's not a millionaire. He's got
Right.
two kids and the third one on the way.
Right.
And it's like I'm working in the steel mill and it's paying my bills, but man, I can't afford to take a risk to quit this now because of all my responsibilities, and I don't know what to do. And I think the majority, and this breaks my heart, the majority of young people come up right now are destined for that. They're destined in terms of the path that they're on. The trajectory they're on will lead them down that path where their only thing is, am I able to pay the bills?
Mhm.
And even that is very iffy. Like if I miss a paycheck, we're in trouble. And
Right.
so you you change that paradigm for them.
Well, you mentioned transformation, and many people who have spoken in my life about this program says you're bringing generational value and generational transformation. Think about this. If I can get young people focused on the right career, job satisfaction, financial security, no stress,
Yeah.
that's going to go down to the next generation because they're going to see it in their parents. Because let's face the facts, in this day and age, most parents are working two jobs, extracurricular activities. It's almost as if parents need a divine interruption because there's so much going on. The perception is, oh, the school system's going to do it for me. And then when they get out, there's nobody to help. And the parents are concerned, saying, what am I going to do? So, we're bringing hope for the hopeless. We're bringing dream for the dreamless, passion for the passionless who really want to focus and
Yeah.
really want the best for the children. Now, here's what's funny, Michael. I'll go in the grocery store and I'll see some of my friends and, hey, how's your daughter doing? She changed her major 3 times. It cost me all kind of extra money. I'm like, well, if you had my program for the minimum investment, you'd be able to save 10,
Oh
12
yeah, no kidding.
dollars, right? But it's amazing that the parents right now have this perception that the school system is going to do it. They're busy. There's a lot of things going on in life right now. There's concern about the future, all the things going on in the world today. And what we have to do is bring that down to a place to say, okay, we know this is here. This is what your child might face. But if I can prepare your child, we said before, everybody has potential, but only those who prepared will fulfill it. And so
Yeah.
what we are a preparation program to get your child focused in specific areas that bring forth success in their life. To me, that's why I'm doing this. I have a passion to help this generation and really see them with the tools they need to have. Now I'm coming out of Fortune 100. I've seen it, right? I've seen the
Yeah.
good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And but I believe that there's a generation right now that if you would just take your time and help your child understand that they need some of these tools, you would say, "Wow." Look what my child is. And then everybody, you're going to tell your neighbors once your child starts understanding who they are. We're working in other countries with this right now, South Africa, other places in the United States here. Every time when I teach this and train this or they go through the courses, parents come back and say, man, nobody's teaching what you're teaching it.
And I think this is so true. And here's the thing: if you ask the average parent, do you trust, for example, the school system? Do you trust even higher education, the system of it? Do you trust that? Do you trust what these liberal colleges are spinning? Do you trust that? They're going to say no. Am I right?
93% of parents say the school system is not preparing my child for the real world. That's
And
a
yet,
recent statistic, 93%.
that's crazy. And yet they're leaving it up to them to do it.
Right. Well, it's an investment, right? are you willing to invest in your child right now with the tools they need for success? Or, 5 years down the road, remember I was teaching at a college here in Pittsburgh, and this young man, after I talked about personality matching career, he was a senior. This was in the first semester, senior in the fall. He came in up after Michael and he's crying. I said, "What's going on? Did I offend you or something?" He says, "I am a people person, and my parents own an accounting business, and they want me to be an accountant. And I hate to be in an office doing it." And I said, "Wait, anybody can do a job, right? But there's more creativity than stress if you find that hand to glove fit." I said, "You might be able to get if this is what your parents are saying, listen, you can do that. I would find something else maybe that can go along with that, but I would encourage you find some of the opportunities as an accountant to go out of the office and meet the client at their office to get out and be with people." But he was literally crying, said, I'm a senior and I made the wrong choice and I'm concerned about my parents. And he was in a dilemma, but I believe at
Yeah,
the end of the day,
yeah,
he
yeah.
came out and found his right hand to glove fit
Hmm.
because that's where peace is. That's where
Yeah,
satisfaction is.
yeah.
That's where harmony is. And that at the end of the day
Oh.
brings hope to people because their child now is focused. And I'll tell you what, there's nothing about seeing my children, my grandchildren fulfilling what God's called them to
Mhm.
do in their assignment and be able to have the tools they need for success.
That's very moving. If you were to ask the average parent, what are the things that you know now that you wish you would have known when you were your child's age?
Yeah.
And how would that have impacted your life? Because what happens is you see it. I worked in the factory. I hate my job, but I'm stuck.
Yep.
But if I'd known this, I would have had a whole different trajectory.
Mhm.
And so, what if you could give them that, the stuff that you wish you would have known,
Mhm.
with and the things that you know they need, but it took you till you're 40 or 45 or 50 or older to
Right.
figure out because nobody taught you. And now but you've learned through the school of hard knocks, and it's a little bit late to kind of modify that because of your life scenario. Well, what if you could give that
Mhm.
now, but much better because it's the proper training. It's not just hit and miss. It's the
Mhm.
full gamut, all the preparation. How much would difference would that make? And think about this, because if you start off on the right track, you're good. But if you start off just a little bit off and you just keep going, you're going to miss the mark by so much. And I love what you have here. I think it's so important. And I know what you're doing is you're making this available to the world. And I know you've got a couple of different options we've talked about. I think are so exciting. There's a people can come in and they can opt in on a membership basis and just hop in, subscribe, and their kids can uh, stay in for as long as needed. There's no contract involved, but they can get in at a very reasonable price and like on a monthly basis, they can just consume and consume and consume. And then you told me something that I was like, "Are you kidding me?" A Fortune 100 executive, now retired from that, who was there to do the kind of like training the adults. You're now saying, "Hey, I'll make myself available on a weekly or biweekly, whatever it is, coaching call to actually help both the parents and the students at a higher rate." But take your choice. You want to just learn on your own or have that coaching. And Ed, that is non-existent. Every parent who's thinking, "I want the best for my child," and I know what you're offering is a fraction of what they'd pay at a community college.
Yep.
You know, it's like shooting ducks in a barrel. I mean, how hard a choice is that? It's so good. Ed, you've done a phenomenal job. I've got the books, I've looked at your materials, I've studied you, I've known you for some time. Your passion just effuses this.
Yeah.
I mean, people will pick up that just from you, which is no surprise why the Fortune 100 companies say, "Come in here and jack them up." Like, get them. And that's what you will do, not only for the parents, but more importantly, for their kids, for the children, for the young men and women that are coming up right now that are looking for direction. And the parents want them to have it, but they don't know how to give it.
Well, I'm here to serve this generation. If you were a parent listening to this webinar, I just want to encourage you. We're here to get your child in the right place. Nothing's going to satisfy you more when you see your children, your grandchildren, great grandchildren, all fulfilling a their purpose and their right career choice and just that personal satisfaction. And that's what this generation needs. They need your time, they need your love, they need your commitment. And that's what we want to do, obviously, in this generation to help them. We have some programs on family. We have some, obviously, all the information we talked about today. I really have a passion for this generation. So I want to encourage you, if you really want to take the time and see your child be successful, then it's going to take some time and investment to do this, a minimal amount of money. This is like less than taking you out for a lunch with your family per month. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like what, the amount of money we want to have you opportunity to take a look at this. But I'm here to encourage everybody right now. These are important tools and skills. LinkedIn's been saying it, and guess what? We're here to help you any way we can. Michael, thank you for the opportunity today. You can contact me at contact@focuslifeinstitute.com, and I can get back to you. But I do want to help you see success in your child. Remember this, your focus, it does determine your future.
That's excellent. And I'm going to put a link under this video in the description of a page that they can go to learn more details and learn how they can become part of the program. Because I know, if you go to Five Guys, I don't know if they have them everywhere, but you take your spouse and one child or whatever, a couple kids, and you're spending more than what your
Oh my
program is.
goodness, yeah.
So, I mean, this is something, and I want to say this to the people that are going to be watching this video. It's very rare that you meet somebody who has a passion to help your child for I mean it's a burning desire to help your child. Not that he knows your child, but he knows the destiny of God, and he knows that God has a future for them, and he believes, and I do too, that God has called him to pass on this thing to this emerging generation. So I can't urge you in strong enough terms. Email him at contact@focuslifeinstitute.com. I'll put a link below the video here so you can learn more about him that way. There'll be other opportunities to pick his brain, and he'll get to all that on that page. But don't miss this opportunity for your children's lives, and just to know that not only for your children but for your grandchildren. It's going to make all the difference in the world. Ed, thank you so much for being with
Thank
us.
you, Michael. I
God bless you,
appreciate it.
brother.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye-bye.